In Boston, protesters beheaded the Christopher Columbus statue. In Virginia, they threw it in the water. These images caught the attention of Native American groups in Minnesota who have petitioned for years to take down a 1930s-era Columbus statue here.
And I spoke with one of my elders this morning, and he said, you can't do it that way. It can't be passive anymore. You have to go down there. You got to take it down.
Mike Forsha of the American Indian Movement Twin Cities claims he bought a rope and let others do the heavy lifting.
After we were done, I was told that, yes, I will be arrested. I will be charged with criminal damage to property, but that's part of what happens. So I'm willing to take that.
When I was there was one state trooper parked about a block away when I arrived, but that trooper drove away while I was there. 45 minutes later, this happened. Now, protesters, we believe mostly from the American Indian Movement, put a rope around the statue of Christopher Columbus and pulled it down. Historians have documented Columbus's involvement in the slave trade centuries ago, and statues have been targeted in other states as well. The threat to this statue was well known today and circulated on social media. So well known, I even asked the Public Safety Commissioner, John Harrington, about the threat less than 90 minutes before it was torn down. Are you aware of a threat that is making its rounds on social media to the Christopher Columbus statue on the grounds of the state capitol in about 90 minutes from now? Groups saying they're going to come and try to take it down?
Yes, I am. I've heard that through social media. Colonel Langer and his staff plan to be out there to meet with the groups, to explain to them the process that is already in existence for if you want to have a statue or you want to have something removed from the Capitol grounds. There is a lawful process for doing that. And we will be out there to meet with them to have that conversation about if this is something that the community wants and the legislature agrees with and all the parties that have to be part to that decision, then there is a lawful process to do that. But we plan to be out there to meet with them this afternoon.
Well, it went a lot further than that. These are the pictures I took of the statue at about 4:15 this afternoon. I had also asked the governor about the issue of possibly removing statues of anyone with racist backgrounds, and he briefly addressed the issue before turning to another subject. Should the state consider those, should we revisit some of these statues? I know this has come up in previous years. Is there going to be a renewed interest in things like Christopher Columbus?
Yes, I think we should. I'm a geographer and historian by trade.
And that's all he said about it before he changed the subject. From our photojournalist on the scene, it appears the one state trooper who addressed the protesters then went into the state capitol, we think with a list of their demands, and left them unattended. It was then when protesters took matters into their own hands and tore the statue down, and it was minutes later before more state troopers in protective gear showed up, who you just saw in Beth's live report a moment ago. So like I said, Paul, a curious chain of events. We're going to try to piece all of this together. This all comes as the governor was actually announcing a special session that is going to start on Friday, when they talked about having more security at the Capitol because they do anticipate protests because of some of the volatile issues they will be taking up. Live in the newsroom, Tom Hauser, 5 Eyewitness News.
Governor Tim Walz calling lawmakers back for a special session starting Friday.
He's asking them to make some major changes in the wake of George Floyd's death. Political reporter Theo Keith is live outside the Capitol right now. Theo, all right, we want to talk about the special session, but what is going on behind you right now?
Yeah, we're having some breaking news out here on the south lawn of the state capitol. About 150 demonstrators just gathered, and they have just torn down the statue of Christopher Columbus. The statue has been here since 1931. Columbus, of course, has been very much criticized in recent years as people look at his history again as a conqueror and not as an explorer. So these protesters came here to tear down the Christopher Columbus statue, maybe 12 feet tall or so. And just literally 15 seconds before you came to us, the statue did come down. This group of protesters had put two ropes around Columbus's neck. They then backed into the street here outside the Capitol. They tore the statue down. The statue fell onto the sidewalk to a big cheer, as you're hearing here again, cheering. Now, you may be asking about law enforcement response to this. We've seen exactly one state trooper who was out here earlier today urging the group to follow the typical process for getting a statue torn down, which is to petition and work through legal channels. Obviously, this group had no interest in following that, and so they tore the statue down. Now, if Brian, you're listening to me, Brian, photographer, is a group of state troopers that has just left the state capitol building, coming out front here, and presumably they're on the way to deal with this crowd in some way that hadn't happened earlier today. You can see the line of maybe 30 state troopers out there on the state capitol lawn. This is the south lawn. They have gone through the fence of the state capitol that's currently surrounding the capitol. It went up about 2 weeks ago as the National Guard came in to try to protect the Capitol. It's still up, even though the Guard has left. Those state troopers have been in the Capitol ever since. They appear to be dressed with shields and batons, and they're coming this way. I don't know how they're going to deal with the crowd yet. The crowd is not yet leaving. Some of them are taking pictures of the Christopher Columbus statue that is on the sidewalk as the state troopers come over in an attempt to deal with the crowd. The crowd now, I can tell you, has seen the troopers come over this way, and some of them are leaving. Some of them are leaving the Capitol, while several more of them are staying to see what kind of a confrontation this is going to be. Again, as we wait for the state troopers to come over this way, there was only one trooper here earlier telling the people not to tear down the statue. The people did not listen to that. They had no intention of following the normal process for dealing with statues, and so they tied two ropes around Christopher Columbus statue's neck and tore it to the ground as it's on the sidewalk now. The state troopers have stopped. They have not advanced any further. There's probably now 40 yards between the troopers and the people who tore the statue down. And we'll see what kind of a move the state wants to make next. I can tell you again, the state did not make much of a move to prevent this statue from coming down.
They said there would be no arrest. They're going to come out. They're going to clean it up. It might take a while. I said we'd like to stay here to film you cleaning him up. And they said that would be no problem.
And a State Patrol spokesperson told us tonight that they do plan to charge the person that they're calling a, quote, instigator, and they say that members of the State Patrol tried to get people to use legal avenues to try to continue petitioning for the removal of the statue before it was torn down. And just about 10 minutes ago, Governor Walz released a statement saying that while he knows many Minnesotans see the Columbus statue as a, quote, legacy of genocide, he does not agree with not using those legal processes and said that people shouldn't have taken the matter into their own hands. Those were his words in his statement sent to our newsroom.
There was about 2 years ago, we were there, maybe 3, and they said that the Capitol grounds has their own department, and they're the ones who decide on the statues and the monuments. And so we started that process just like it was done before. And so yesterday when the State Patrol came out and he had his, handful of paperwork that showed the process, and we told him when we left yesterday, he was going to be coming down, and we were willing to be arrested for it. and he promised he wouldn't arrest us, and he didn't. And it was very, very peaceful. It was very beautiful. And within 3 minutes, he was down, and the process took 20 years, and it's still up there. And so when I spoke with the governor and the lieutenant governor a couple of months ago about this, I agreed to wait for the process, and we were going to have it done, through the proper channels, and we were going to have a big celebration and a big powwow on the Capitol grounds, but the process just took too long.
The captain who is in charge of Capitol security let me know just before yesterday's press conference that there was a protest scheduled for about 5 o'clock leaving from Minneapolis and the conversation was that they were going to take down that statue of Christopher Columbus. The State Patrol organized a team of about 25 troopers at the Capitol. They took the protocol that we have that we've always used, and in fact, it's the protocol that we use regularly when we have protests, to have a senior representative of the State Patrol to go out, talk to the folks that are organizing the protests, and then create what are the rules we're going to have here. Is this a peaceful protest? Is this going to be an aggressive protest? And that determines what our position is. The captain went out with a representative from the Department of Public Safety, Nigel Perrault. He's the Native American liaison from the Department of Public Safety, to have that conversation with the protest leader. As they were having that conversation, members of the group threw a rope around the statue and pulled it off. So from what I know about this is he went out there to have that conversation. They were having the conversation. The rope went around the statute, and as the statue came down, the troopers were coming out of the Capitol to secure that area. They were not able to get out there in time.
Yeah, well, there will be consequences. This was an act of civil disobedience. The people doing it clearly understood and were prepared to take those consequences. Each of these incidents is deciding, and we've seen it in this room over the last few weeks, the criticisms of being too aggressive with the use of chemical weapons and other non-lethal, and then some cases of being overly aggressive with them. The leaders on the ground have to make a decision that we're in. These people came, and I think I certainly do not condone, nor is this the right way to go about this change. I do think to the public out there, and don't confuse the random burning of a liquor store with an act of civil disobedience. And it doesn't mean that we're condoning the behavior, but I think to understand the motivating factors that were there. I say this as someone from Mankato who has spent every December 26th for the last couple decades down on the Sidon Riverfront where 38 Dakota were hung. There is a lot of emotion around this, as there were with the paintings in the Capitol, as there were with B'day-McCoska, as there is with the seal, and I mentioned this yesterday. So I want to be very clear. There will be consequences for this. They will be accordingly to what our laws are about doing this. We are going to, and I'm going to tell people, we have to create a system where people feel like we can have a debate and an outcome on this. But quite honestly, I think when it comes to the Capitol grounds, many folks don't know how to do that, and I'm not certain they feel like there's a way to remove them. So I just want to be very clear. I won't condone the behavior. There will be consequences for it. It was an act of civil disobedience that we need to make sure people feel that there is a proper outlet to address what are legitimate concerns around what they view as a genocidal monument that they have to walk to in their democracy.
So first of all, I'm not going to perform for folks. I'm not going to feign sadness. I will not shed a tear over the loss of a statue that honored someone who, of his own admission, sold 9 and 10-year-old girls into sex slavery. So let me start there. In my role as the Capital Area Architectural and Planning Board Chair, or the CAP Board as it's called, I want to be really clear. We need to follow a process that's important and, frankly, long overdue about the artwork, the imagery, the symbols within the Capitol building and on the Capitol grounds. All Minnesotans should feel safe and welcomed and valued when they step into and on the grounds of their house, the Minnesota State Capitol. And to be clear, the current process is not well defined. We have had these conversations at the CAP Board, and we will continue these conversations because even those who are familiar with state government have not heard of the CAP Board. And this indicates that we need to do things differently. In partnership with the Minnesota Historical Society, we need to evaluate and re-evaluate what is displayed at the Minnesota State Capitol. We need to build a process that is accessible, proactive, community-driven, and transparent. In the terms of the statue of Christopher Columbus, I wish we had a better process that had been followed. I wish the removal had been different. But I am not sad that it's gone.
Did you hear from the Lieutenant Governor at all? Because she tweeted and said, "I'm sad the statue of Christopher Columbus is gone." Or she said, I can't say that I'm sad that the statue of Christopher Columbus is gone. I'm not. Our state is long overdue for a hard look at the symbols, statues, and icons that were created without the input of many of our communities. That was her response. Have you had any conversation with her?
I haven't spoken to Peggy yet, no. I've known her for over 20 years. I know she was there with us in spirit, and I understand why she couldn't help us pull it down yesterday. But I think if she wasn't the Lieutenant Governor, I think she would have been right there with us.
Now, 2 weeks after protesters took down the Christopher Columbus statue at the Minnesota State Capitol, the state has not announced any arrests. Tomorrow, the people in charge of Capitol statues will meet for the first time since the incident, but it may be a long process to decide what happens to that statue. Political reporter Theo Keith takes a look.
The Christopher Columbus statue used to sit atop that base right back there. It's been gone 2 weeks, and it does not appear anyone's been arrested. Protesters brought down the Columbus statue with no resistance, despite at least 2 hours warning. 14 days later, the state is still investigating who was involved in the incident, even though it played out on live TV. At the time, the governor said people would be held accountable.
There will be consequences for it.
As for the statue, its fate lies with the Capital Area Architectural Planning Board. The CAP Board, as it's called, is scheduled to meet Thursday. In a news release, the board says there is no formal policy or process addressing removal of monuments. That contradicts what state officials said both before and after Columbus came down.
If you want to have a statue or you want to have something removed from the Capitol grounds, there is a lawful process for doing that.
We saw a state trooper telling protesters there was a process. The governor also said there was a process. But the process isn't all that clear. What we know is state law puts the CAP Board in charge. Its executive secretary says the board has never gotten a formal request to remove Columbus. But the law does not spell out the standards on what stays and what goes. Deciding that could take months or a year. The Native American protesters said pulling down the Columbus statue was a healing moment because Columbus conquered, enslaved, and killed Native people. Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who is Ojibwe, chairs the board that's in charge of statues and is calling for a review of all artwork at the Capitol. As for where Columbus is now, a state official told me he's in a secure location. From the Capitol, Theo Keith, Fox 9.